An update on Kenny Omega's AEW return, plus we have an update when it comes to the AEW console game and the development, story mode, etc. The ratings for this week's St. Patrick's Day Slam edition of Dynamite are in. All this and more in today's AEW news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, so let's start off talking about Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega, the former AEW World Champion, of course, he's been absent since the Dynamite after Full Gear in November. We knew then at the time that he was going to be taking a significant amount of time off to recover from extensive injuries. He was going to be undergoing multiple surgeries, and he had a bad neck, a bad knee, a hernia, all this kind of stuff that he was going to get fixed. We knew for the past, or the prior sort of 12, 18 months, or frankly for a couple of years, he'd been working through a lot of really serious injuries. Reportedly, even when AEW started in 2019, he was told at that time, you kind of need to get surgery, and he put it off because he wanted to get AEW up and running. Of course, he was going to have this World Championship run. He was going to have this Impact World Championship run. He was doing all this kind of stuff, including in Mexico as well, and he just thought, you know what? I'm going to push through the pain barrier, and then once I get to the end of it, then I'll have the surgeries. Well, we have an update when it comes to Kenny Omega's return from injury, and this comes from the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer, who has said Kenny Omega is currently recovering from knee surgery. Recovery will take around 10 weeks. He's also getting surgery to repair his sports hernia at the end of March with about a 2-month recovery. There's also other things that he's taken care of. There is currently no time frame set for his return. So people that were hoping that Kenny Omega would be back, possibly for Double or Nothing in May, that looks to be a really long way off. Kenny Omega could be out for way, way longer than that. I wouldn't be shocked at this point if, he might be looking at March. I know some people will say, well, April, May, that's the sports hernia one, but we're also talking about knee surgery at the same time. We're talking about getting all of these surgeries at once and then hoping that he's going to be back maybe by the summer. I think he's probably looking towards more All Out as opposed to Double or Nothing. I think the positive situation is when it comes to Kenny Omega right now, and look, Kenny Omega is, for me, one of the top 5 wrestlers in the world right now. I think that any naysayers he had, coming out of New Japan, and there were quite a few naysayers. People were saying, oh, can he do it on a consistent basis? Can he do it in North America? All that kind of stuff. Those doubts were there in the early days of AEW. Yes, he had some great matches against, John Moxley at the first Full Gear, but during that period of time, there was a sort of question, shall we say, about how really good is Kenny Omega? Is this just a guy that we've heard stuff about, and can he transition into, the North American market and on a week-to-week regular basis of television? Can he adapt to that? And it took a little while, but once he really got into the tag team of Hangman Page, and then obviously throughout his World Championship run, the matches he had against the likes of Moxley or Bryan Danielson or Rey Fenix or Hangman Page, I mean, the list goes on and on. The triple threat match he had at All Out last year was spectacular. All the matches he had an impact, right? The match against Sami Callihan at Slammiversary last year, in my opinion, was spectacular, and I really did not have super high hopes for that match, it must be said. So I don't think there's any doubt that Kenny Omega is absolutely one of the best wrestlers on the planet today. I think it's all the more impressive he did what he did over the course of the last 18 months, considering he was so beat up. There's a video, I forget the guy's name, but there's a chiropractor on YouTube. He's a big guy on YouTube. He's done a lot of pro wrestlers. He's the guy with the hammer that hammers the people's backs. He did videos like Bobby Lashley, Kevin Nash, Lana, and he did one with Kenny Omega, and it came out right before Full Gear. And he just sort of spoke about all of the injuries he had, and basically the guy's falling apart. He was saying, I've been wrestling essentially with vertigo since around 2018 from a match he had in New Japan. So he's got neck issues, head issues. As the report says in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, he's got knee issues. We know about the sports hernia that he has, that he was battling through. He mentioned in a recent interview he did, I think it was with Busted Open Radio, that there was an Impact television taping he was at where he was meant to do a run-in and run down to the ring and attack someone, probably Rich Swann or someone like that. And he couldn't even run down the ramp, and it's a very small ramp at Impact. He couldn't even run down the ramp because every time he moved, he felt like he was getting stabbed in the abdomen. And in the end, they had to cut the segment because they said, Kenny, you're walking around like a 90-year-old man. And he's like, I know. My sports hernia is really, really bad. So he's getting that fixed. We also know that he's had the shoulder issue for a long time. I think he had surgery on that now. That was the first thing he got surgery on, but we knew about his torn labrum, that he was having to see essentially a physiotherapist like once or twice a week just to be able to work a match. That's in addition to all these other injuries. So he was really, really beat up. I think the positive thing would be for AEW is they're not in a position anymore where Kenny Omega not being on the roster really, really, really hurts them. I think Kenny Omega not being healthy in the early, time of AEW might have been a bit of a problem. But considering their roster is so deep and they've got so many great talents, whether it is, Hangman Page, Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, the list goes on and on of the names they have, MJF, Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley. They've got such a depth of talent there that they're fine. But as with any roster, Kenny Omega being on it is certainly a positive. So whenever he does come back, it will be a positive. Again, I would probably suggest that Double or Nothing might be a little bit too soon. Maybe, just maybe. Maybe he's moving more towards All Out. I would say All Out's really their sort of, WrestleMania level event. And I think they're going to hold it in a bigger arena in Chicago. I think they're going to go back to the United Center once again, or maybe even bigger. We don't know this time around. So I think that might be the sort of date that he's looking for. Maybe he'll make his return. I don't know. I don't know what they'll be looking for. Maybe he'll make his return at Double or Nothing and he'll wrestle his first match at All Out. But that's quite a big period of time from May to sort of early September. So we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see for that one. But it doesn't look like he's going to be coming back anytime soon. Speaking of Kenny Omega, though, of course, he's heavily involved in the AEW console game. We have an update when it comes to that as well. Obviously, WWE 2K22 has just come out. So a lot of people have been talking, well, what's going on then with the AEW console game? Now, new details are being revealed on the much anticipated AEW console video game. A new report from Fightful Select notes that there will be a story mode for the game and that some of the AEW wrestlers are given input into the game's storylines. It was also noted that several members of the Ukes team that helped create the popular Raw vs. SmackDown video games are also part of this story mode process. While Ukes is known to be the developer of the AEW video game, no publisher has been announced as of right now. It's believed that once the publisher is confirmed, there will be more information released, such as a release date and other details. Kenny Omega, as we just spoke about, is said to be determined for the AEW video game to be a success, and word is that he understands how integral a great showing could be. The video game is reportedly coming along, as AEW music producer Mikey Ruckus recently stated there was a soft deadline for some of the music for the story mode to be completed the week before the recent AEW Revolution pay-per-view. Furthermore, new AEW Women's World Champion Thunder Rosa recently revealed that her prototype for the game has already been created and was shown to her. So it's a weird one, this video console game, isn't it? Because so many people are excited about it and want to see more about it. And I mean, when did we have the first look at it? I think it was around February 2021, was it? It was a while ago. Those images were a while ago. Since then, I think we've maybe had one more look at it, I would suggest. It's taken a while. I think, this is the thing people don't necessarily realize about video games. And I'm no gaming expert, it must be said. But from what I understand, creating a video game takes a ton of time. I mean, we are talking like 3 years, 4 years, like development. And the people will say, well, how come WWE used to get them out every year? Because realistically, they don't change as much. They're not creating a game from scratch. They kind of just alter things. They get the previous year's game. It's not really like FIFA games, right? They get the previous year's game. They update the rosters. They update the kits, the logos, and all that kind of stuff, and maybe tweak a few things here and there. But it's essentially the same game. And then over a period of 5 or 6 years, the game is radically different to the game that it first started. When you're creating a game from scratch, it takes time. It does take a lot of time. So I'm willing to give AEW the benefit of the doubt with that one. I also do think that, look, it is very important that they have a good showing because, we haven't had a really good, pro wrestling game for a while as far as I'm aware. You hear some good things, I suppose, about this recent WWE 2K22 game. And maybe it's just because it was my era, I suppose, but people do just look so fondly back on the games like SmackDown vs. Raw, SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. I mean, the original SmackDown games I loved. SmackDown 2, Know Your Role, I played it to death. I mean, I really, really did. And, the GMOs on the SmackDown vs. Raw games, which I know have come back. I haven't got the game, so I can't tell you if this new one's any good or not. But all that kind of stuff. Pro wrestling fans are like any fan. They just love a good game, and we haven't really had one for a while. And by all accounts, this was the same guy involved was the executive producer in this one is going to the same guy that did the famous No Mercy game as well. So we'll wait and see. I mean, I must be said, when I saw those initial graphics, I was like, like the Jericho one particularly, I was like, wow, I'm not sure about that, but that's early development. So that's like seeing CGI in a film before it's actually ready. And you have to sort of go, wow, okay, then maybe that's not particularly fair to have a look at that one and judge it when it comes to those kind of clips. Nevertheless, we'll wait and see. When it comes to all of that. So that's the update when it comes to the AEW console game. We have an update when it comes to the ratings this week for AEW Dynamite. Of course, it was the St. Patrick's Day Slam edition of Dynamite on TBS, and Wednesday's live St. Patrick's Day edition of AEW Dynamite drew 993,000 viewers on TBS, according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. Now, this is up 5.08% from last week's Post-Revolution episode, which of course drew 945,000 viewers. This week's Dynamite drew a 0.38 rating in the 18-49 key demographic, which is actually down 5% from last week's 0.40 rating. Dynamite ranked 6 on the cable top 150 with the 0.38 rating in that demographic, which is down, of course, from last week's number 1 ranking. Dynamite ranked 52 in viewership for the night on cable this week, which is down from last week's 50th ranking. This week's Dynamite viewership was up 35.7% from the same week in 2021. The key demo rating was up 29.3% from the prior year. The 2021 episode went head-to-head with WWE NXT and was also the St. Patrick's Day Slam show. There was an NCAA game between Notre Dame and the Rutigers. I mean, I don't know anything about the NCAA, it must be said, which topped the cable top 150 this week. It's an odd show, isn't it, when it comes to the ratings, right? Because last week, the viewership was a bit lower, but the demo rating was high. They were number 1 on cable. This week, the viewership goes up, but the demo rating goes down. So it's like I said last week. It was under 1 million viewers, which people were surprised about, but AEW would have been very happy with it because it was the number 1 show on cable. Because realistically, that's what the television networks truly and honestly care about. They care if you're the number 1 show on cable. They don't, obviously, to an extent, they care about viewership, but if they're the number 1 show on cable, that's what the advertisers and the television networks truly, honestly care about. That's the situation there. So I don't know if they'll be disappointed or not. They're hovering around that 900 to 1 million viewers. What they need to do to up it, I don't know. I'm not sure they know, because sometimes when they don't load up a show, they'll get over 1 million viewers. I think the positive they'll definitely be looking at is one of those last statistics that I was reading out just then, is that the overall viewership is up over 35% year on year, and the key demo rating is up nearly 30% year on year. Obviously, that's not sustainable, because this time next year they'll be doing some really positive numbers. But I think if you're going to plot it on a graph, they'll be very, very happy with that. People in Warner Media will be very happy with that, considering this time last year as well, they had competition. Now, you could argue, is it those NXT viewers that have come over? Possibly, but I also think they've also generated new viewers too. Because NXT, frankly, had an older audience, and AEW still has its relatively youthful audience as well. So they'll be happy with that. As I said, what's the next thing to improve at the ratings? I have no idea. I really have no idea. Tony Khan responded to the ratings on Twitter. He said, quote, "Thank you everyone who watched AEW Dynamite St. Patrick's Day Slam last night. We had a great audience, even with huge competition from March Madness on our sister channel, and we're back tomorrow with Friday night AEW Rampage, immediately after Houston UAB on TNT." So, I mean, maybe he's saying that actually, you know what, with the competition, we probably would have cracked over 1 million, because, look, they were very close. They were, 993,000, 7,000 away from 1 million. If they didn't have that competition, possibly they would have been over, but again, this is the television business. There's always going to be strong competition, regardless. There's sport practically on every night nowadays, and that's the big competition, or cable news. Let's talk about Brian Cage. We spoke before about his option being picked up by AEW, which was slightly surprising. His last televised match in AEW happened last October, but the company still has apparently plans for him. As I mentioned, AEW picked up the option year on Cage's contract, according to a report last month. However, he says he's still unsure what the future holds for him in the company. He said, quote, "All I can say, I guess, is there is a plan, and I guess that's about as much as I can throw around out there. So I guess we'll have to wait and see." So he's sort of saying, look, there is a plan for me, because they wouldn't pick up the contract. They wouldn't pick up the option if there wasn't a plan. I would assume he's obviously maybe been told what this plan is from the outside looking in, looking at storylines and what we're seeing on TV at the moment. What's the plan for him? The only thing I can think of is that he will somehow be involved in this Keith Lee, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ricky Starks, Team Taz situation. Because, of course, the last thing he really did was him being kicked out of Team Taz and losing the FTW Championship to Ricky Starks and all that kind of stuff. Since then, we haven't seen him. Not because he's injured, just because he hasn't been used. And maybe it's because, I've seen people saying, well, does he have heat? Like the Melissa Santos thing, her comments about him. If he had heat, they wouldn't pick up the option, I don't think. So that's the only storyline I can see where I go, okay, I could maybe see the logic of him coming in to back up Keith Lee, but frankly, coming in and being involved in the whole Team Taz stuff again, when is he going to do something that's not Team Taz centric? I don't know. But what is there to do with him outside of Team Taz? I don't know either. So that's a very curious one. I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens when he comes back. Finally, we have an update when it comes to Paige Van Zandt and her MMA career now that she is signed with AEW. She has confirmed that she has not retired from the sport and is signed to both boxing and wrestling deals. This was on the Carton and Roberts show. She said, quote, "I'm not done MMA fighting at all. I think people have this idea that you have to stick to one thing, but being a mixed martial artist and being in this sport, you can definitely evolve and can focus on one aspect at any given time. Definitely not retired from MMA, but at this current moment, I'm signed to boxing and professional wrestling." So, I kind of agree and I disagree with her perspective on this one. No, you don't have to do just one thing. And I think the AEW schedule certainly lends you to being able to do things outside of pro wrestling, because you're only doing one or two, at most 3 dates a week, considering if it's a pay-per-view day, it'll be a Wednesday, a Friday, and a Saturday/Sunday. Usually it's just one. Usually it's 1 day a week, which is the Dynamite taping on Wednesdays. They tape Rampage afterwards. So she can do other things. She can do MMA. Jake Hager's done MMA fights as well. She can do boxing fights too. But she's also not a super experienced pro wrestler. And I think that's the thing which I would say is tough to do at the same time. You have to learn and train to become a pro wrestler. And to do that at the same time as doing your regular MMA training, that's going to be difficult. So we'll see how that continues over. Once she's a pro wrestler and experienced enough, of course she can do other stuff. Like Bobby Lashley's done it, Jake Hager's done it. But those guys that don't have the experience coming in and saying, I'll just do pro wrestling once a week and then I'll do MMA stuff. Impact Wrestling tried it with Tito Ortiz or Rampage Jackson or King Mo. And it got to the point where you need to be around to do one thing. You need to be around to do either your MMA training or your pro wrestling training. That's the problem with that. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestle News 365, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.